It has taken me around 50 hours, which includes building a framework for the AI agent to work in, to build phase one, that 500 to 700 hour project. And again, that's including building out this process that is now being reused for the next phase, and we're going 10 to 20 times faster. This is an enterprise grade B2B SaaS product that has databases, scripting, a web application. This is a super sophisticated application.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Leadership Exchange podcast. My name is Tracy. You can follow me on LinkedIn at Tracy S. Lee or on X at Lady Leet. I'm so excited to be here today with Rich Walker, who is the CEO of Quick. Do we say Quick or Quick Forms, actually?
It's quick.
I know you asked
Yeah.
Quick Forms. So, CEO of Quick. Rich and I actually met back at DocuSign Momentum back in February or March. I can't remember exactly the date. But we're both DocuSign partners, and Rich, when I met you, I was so drawn to you because you just have that entrepreneurial spirit, and I loved our conversation, and I'm so glad we've got to hang out ever since.
Yeah, me too, Tracy. I feel the same way. And look, this may come across wrong, but I also love meeting women leaders who are entrepreneurs because I don't find enough of them. And you bring a different balance and dynamic to the world. So thank you for being you and doing what you do.
Thank you, thank you. I appreciate that. Most of my friends and the people I work with, I suppose, are men. Um, but I also love that too, right? But I do have this habit though. I mean, as I've gotten older, right? So, when you're in your 20s or something, saying like, "Oh, let's hang out," is not a thing, right? And so lately, I remember I invited this guy. He's the VP at this company, and I was like, "Yeah, just come hang out and drink bourbon at my house." So we didn't know each other very well, but it wasn't until he came, I was like, "Oh, I probably should have said, that men will be here too, and that it's not weird," because his wife is probably thinking like, "Why is this random girl inviting you over?" So the dynamics have shifted a little bit as I've gotten older.
No, that's true.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Rich, you are such an inspiration because, we've been talking a lot about AI in our few interactions last week, and I just think the story of sort of like what you've been able to do with AI is so inspiring. Do you want to share with the world what you've been up to?
Yeah, look, I'd like to offer a little bit of backstory just to
Of
fill in some
course.
gaps for people because I am somebody who is not classically trained in software development. I got my degree in finance. I got my first job out of college at Arthur Andersen doing business consulting. I quickly became a technologist because I understood technology just naturally and solved problems, and I love solving problems. So it was a really nice fit, and I started teaching myself software development. I then became a financial advisor and left the tech world. But the tech world called me back because I figured out there was a problem in financial services, which was I had to handwrite paper forms. And I thought, man, this is stupid. I'm going to make $4 an hour versus the 200 an hour I used to charge. So I built software on my own to fill out forms. And I think of myself as a hack when it comes to software development because I just make it work. And I make it work well, like no bugs and it's enterprise grade, et cetera. But my view was, what is the pattern? I don't need to understand the nuance, the sophistication of software. I need to understand the pattern because I'm very good at the recognition of human patterns and technology patterns, et cetera. And I said, okay, I'll just copy paste and do everything I can. So I just started learning code that way and building it up. And it was about 3 years before I hired my first couple of programmers. And a funny joke is one of my first developers after 3 months said, "Rich, what's your favorite part of programming?" And I looked at him deadpan and I said, "Not doing it." And he was like, "What do you mean? You built all this code for years." I'm like, "Yeah, means to an end. I'm an entrepreneur first. It was how I built my business." So I give you that kind of backstory because I did a lot of software development to build my company, but I haven't coded anything in at least 5 years, save maybe looking at HTML or SQL commands. I just don't keep up with coding today. I mean, I barely understand Git. I understand it's a repo and version control, but never used it, don't know what to do. So, as AI has come out, I'm so enamored with what's possible. And I love watching TikTok and seeing all these different AI people talk about how they're using it. Oh, I'm using agents now. When all this came out, I'm like, what's an agent? What do we do with this? And I didn't really know what to do, frankly. I'm very good at prompting and getting content and all that kind of stuff, but how do you make it do coding? My CTO, he's all about this, but he's so busy transforming our company that he said, look, we can't tackle how we implement AI in our company yet. We're going to go 2 or 3 times faster just with the changes we're doing. So we don't have time yet to implement AI and agentic coding. So over the summer, I mean, frankly, in the month of July, I gave myself kind of a goal. I wanted to see, could I build a micro app? You know, you see these people talking about, oh, I used Replit, I used Lovable, I used VO, I used all these different things and it just built it and it was so cool. I'm like, I want to feel cool. I want to do that. So I started figuring out what would I do. But you know what, Tracy, I think I just approach things a little bit differently than most traditional technologists do. I look at it first as a business problem. I'm not saying they don't, but I said, I'm going to really refine a business strategy and a business plan around a product idea. And I honestly spent a couple of days with Claude just in chat mode coming up with this really amazing business plan. Why is it going to fail? What are the risks? How could it succeed? And dialing it in. So then I thought, okay, if I have that, could I then ask it how to actually build it? Now, I'm a fan of AWS, Amazon, because that's where we host and have since 2009. And I understand AWS has 1,000 million different things it can do. So I figured it could build the whole thing in AWS. So in Claude, I said, how would you build this in AWS? And it started telling me how it would do it, read the business plan, and came up with an implementation strategy plan. I then took that and said, okay, how would I turn this into code now? And I was so basic. I really thought what I wanted it to do is tell me the code to copy, paste, and execute. I mean, I was going to do the work, copy, paste, execute, but I wasn't going to write the code. So it started kind of going down this road of if I could build a really detailed implementation plan, then it could dial it in and help me write the code, and then I could execute on it. Again, I'm still not even using agents at this point, and I'm showing this kind of methodology and where I'm getting. At this point, I have VS Code. I have a new IDE environment I've never had. I haven't used one, and even on this new computer I haven't not had one. So I get us all the setup, and my CTO says, hey, Rich, do you see over there in the lower right corner? You're in ask mode. You can go to agent mode. And then I was blown away. I'm like, wow, you could actually write my code and copy, paste, and execute for me? Cool. So I just started doing these things, Tracy. You know, I'll shut up for a second. I don't know. I'm just rambling. There's so much to this.
No, it's amazing. Keep going.
All right. So what it came to was I wanted to really figure out how could I get the Claude agent to work for me. And then I discovered Claude Code could be installed in the VS Code environment. That changed everything. Now it could write code, update files, execute commands, use Amazon CLI, which is the command line interface to interact with Amazon and perform work. So then I really revised my strategy. And by the way, this is iterations over a couple of weeks where I started to figure out if I could get the implementation plan into what I'm referring to as units of work or atomic documents. And I think of them like JIRA tickets. You want to give your actual engineer one ticket to represent one unit of work, have them do that, integrate it back into the code and keep going. I thought, what if I could do that? How well would the AI work? Well, Tracy, that's been a phenomenal breakthrough because the first thing I understood about Claude and coding of the AI in general is we all have this assumption it can remember everything. No, it can't. Everybody knows there's a context window, but we still have this frame of mind of, oh, it's going to know everything and therefore it can fix all the bugs or it can write all the code. And it can't. I actually at one point produced a document that was 500 pages long to describe the implementation. And the moment I pasted it into the chat window, it said, you've exceeded the limits of this context. It couldn't even read the document. It was too big. So how could it program for me? And so what I realized is a lot of us are treating AI as two different things that I think are both wrong. Either you treat it like a junior programmer not capable of doing the work but can get you partway there, or you treat it like a computer that can do 100% of everything and it's a silver bullet. Neither of those are true in my world. If you treat it more like the human and you give it the ability that humans have, you have amazing people on your team who do things you never dreamt of. So embrace that. I treat it as an expert programmer who can find best practices and figure things out. But at the same time, I treat it like a human who can only do one thing really well at a time. And that's how I address the context window is keep it bite-sized, let it work on the one thing, refresh its memory over time, and let it keep understanding the business plan, the implementation plan, and the unit of work it's working on. So here's what I found. The project that I had started on, the implementation plan was estimated in human hours by Claude to be at least, I don't know, I think the starting point was at least 500 hours. It's grown. It's grown to over 1,200 hours of human time. And it also gave me an assessment based on developer skill set. I'm talking about expert skill set, 1,200 hours of work. Put it in junior, it's way more, obviously. It has actually taken me around 50 hours, which includes building a framework for the AI agent to work in and deploying all the code into Amazon to build phase one. That 500 to 700 hour project took a total of 50 hours. And again, that's including building out this process that is now being reused for the next phase, and we're going 10 to 20 times faster.
And that's the business plan as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's total from start, from the day I said, I'm going to figure this out, to deploying the first phase, which is a fully functional system. And look, I think a lot of people think, oh, I could build a simple app. I'm super ambitious with this. This is an enterprise grade B2B SaaS product that has databases, scripting, a web application. It has security. It has queuing systems. It has SMS management. It has dashboards. It has reports. This is a super sophisticated application.
Yes. I'm actually so curious to see, we have a lot of engineers that watch this channel. And so I'm actually so curious I'm sure everybody who codes is like, more on the senior side is like, oh, let me get access to the code, because what can it actually do, right? One of the things that you said that I haven't heard from most people I talk to is treat it like an expert engineer versus treat it like a junior engineer. So most of the people I talk to who are far along in the coding journey, and again, who are developers through and through, are like, oh, you got to treat it like it's a junior engineer. So I actually wonder if I wonder where the two worlds meet. Like, have you showed any sort of more senior like your CTO? Have you showed your CTO the work yet?
Mm-hmm.
And is he like, wow, this is amazing? Or he's like, oh, well, there's this you haven't thought of and that you haven't thought of, or...
We'll be back to the episode in a second, but first, I'd like to acknowledge the team behind the channel, This.Labs. We're seeing 3x to 5x productivity improvements with our teams and clients using tools like Cursor, Claude Code, and GitHub Copilot. We help teams adopt these technologies and get max value out of them through strategic partnerships, trainings, and other software engineering services. Check us out at ai.this.co. Thanks, now back to the video.
Look, the proof is going to be when the application's 100% done, commercialized, and making money.
Yeah.
To me, that'll be the ultimate proof. At the moment, the first phase is totally functional and works.
Yeah.
And just by the way, the first phase is a web crawler. You give it a URL, it'll completely bring in all the content from the URL and put it into systems. So look, here's the thing. I don't know Python code. I don't know Terraform scripts. I don't know JavaScript and Lambda. I don't know Dynamo database, all the things that this has been built on. So I'm not in a position to go say, was that high quality code or not? But this is why I started with my background, Tracy.
Yeah.
If you were to look at my original coding frameworks from 2003 to 2010, they worked. They were bulletproof. They were no bugs. They were easy to maintain. I did things that normal developers didn't do. I'll give you an example. Back then, you would write store procedures and databases to perform the logic in the database. I built an object-oriented way to do that. And nobody does that. My DBA is like, you're crazy, Rich. Why would you do this? Well, for me, I could go into an Excel spreadsheet and design tables and have an output scripts for creating the tables, creating all of the adds and updates and deletes, and performing all this work super fast. So to me, it was all about, does it function or not? And I've had a really talented, I would say elegant programmer on my team before who wrote the most amazing, beautiful code that I didn't understand, but worked really, really well, just took a long time to get to. I've also had developers who do the fast and easy with lots of bugs and the iterations and they fix it. My version, like I say, I'm a hack when it comes to this because I'm not classically trained. Does it work? And it does.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's actually quite inspiring because I think most most business folks who, there's always this rub, right? Where you're always trying to translate business requirements to engineers. And somewhere along the way, everything in the engineering world has sort of been invented, right? To make that process or communication easier between that so that engineers can actually build what the business wants. But you're a business person and you're going and you're building this thing and you don't even need to like work with any humans let's like to get your job accomplished, right? So but then again you kind of go back and um there's this whole thing that people say about how if your code base and your processes are set up well for engineers to onboard, let's say, or to understand your code base, that's exactly what you need AI for. So maybe you're just so good at, again, communicating that out. So maybe it won't work for people who actually aren't good at communicating that to be able to build like the product that you've built just with
I
AI.
look, when I did show this to my CTO, he said something really interesting to me, which I loved. He was like, "Why didn't I come up with this, Rich?" But
Yeah.
the interesting thing was he would have started with the implementation, not the business requirements.
Uh-huh.
Because from a technical standpoint, his mind is, how do I implement what you have designed?
Mm-hmm.
He's not the designer.
Yeah.
And I am a designer in that way. I am still a product person that says, here's the product I want. And so I understand the requirements. By the way, I didn't write the business plan or the implementation plan. Claude did. I told it what I wanted it to accomplish, and it wrote all this stuff for me. And we had lots of dialogue that it took and then encapsulated into final documents. Let me also spread out my process a little bit differently. You take the business plan into a brand new session with a different prompt. And the new prompt is you are now an implementation architect strategist. So that way its focus is no longer on the business side, it's on how do I implement. And it doesn't have any of the noise from the prior chat. It only has the outcome of the business plan that is perfected or refined.
Mm-hmm.
So then that creates the implementation plan. I then took that to the implementation plan to a whole another new chat. And I said the same thing. You're an implementation strategist. Here, read this plan and this business plan for full context. Tell me why it's going to fail. What's wrong with it? How can we make it better? And would come up with things like, oh, you need cost optimization. You need performance optimization. You need security controls. And then it perfected it better. And so the difference is my CTO started with, I'm going to put this crazy prompt together that says, here's everything I want you to do all at once. And doesn't sit there and do the planning like I was doing, because that's the nature of who I am. But because I have these plans, the whole time I'm working with Claude, when it does run out of context, when it compacts its memory, when I start a new session, the first thing it does is it reads the plans, the implementation and business plan. So it has full understanding of the goals. And more. I actually have other documentation that it's working on. To be honest, over this weekend, I realized the implementation plans are getting so long, like 6,000 lines of text just to describe all these units of work, that I had a new prompt created to refine it into a summary file. So now I don't take up 6,000 lines of memory. I have 400 lines of memory to describe all the steps, and now
Yeah.
it can work faster and more efficiently. These are the types of things I'm learning. But yeah, I think most technologists focus on, hey, get the tech. And second,
Yeah.
I know how to do this faster than you, so I'm going to interfere and do it myself. Me, I don't know anything about this code. I can't interfere. I just have to challenge it to fix the problems. And I feel like, look, I know why people say that it's a junior developer, because sometimes it feels like a toddler. I'm going to try working around this. No, you're not. You don't get to skip ahead. Stop. Come back and make this work. And I have to keep pulling it back and keep it directionally on target to get the result that I want.
Yeah. That's amazing. I haven't heard, this is the first time I've heard that you should have Claude understand the product requirements and the goals or the business part of it, because maybe that's what's missing. I mean, this we're consultancy, right? And all of my people are engineers, and so while they are business minded, probably much like your CTO, they don't think about. I mean, they probably aren't thinking about. They are usually they're thinking about implementation, right? It comes to them
Yeah.
after everything's thought out, and then they think about the implementation. But I wonder what product people are doing, right, to sort of keep these standards in place. I mean, that's a good best practice, though. I mean, you should have some sort of like,
Look, isn't there a normal complaint from engineers? We don't understand the business well enough.
yep,
I
always,
hear it from my
always.
team.
Hmm.
And the product requirement documents or any kind of spec you put together never does enough.
Yep, yep.
So it's interesting to me that Claude could. It could take the business plan and understand enough and then use that to build an implementation plan and understand enough to actually implement this thing. Look, I want to give one other caveat to the whole audience, because if anybody's listening to this, they're like, okay, but Rich, come on. Would you deploy this into your production environment? The answer is no. I started with a fresh Amazon account. No code had ever been written. So 100% of what I'm doing is in a walled garden. And if it works and it's great, I will then ask it to make the ability to migrate it into a production environment. I'm in the POC phase. I just want to make that clear. Because
And I
would
love
I
that
unleash
Claude is
this?
just going to do that for you, though, right? Like,
Yeah, oh
you
yeah,
come up with a
100%.
migration plan. Okay, now start migrating, and it'll just get implemented.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, look, legacy companies like mine, 23 years old, would we unleash Claude to have access even to our dev environments to start doing things we don't want or don't know it's going to do? No, we have to be really, really careful about how you make this happen. So my approach is for net new, brand new systems that, and we're going to learn. We're going to figure this out over time. In fact, my CTO, his posit is that there's going to be a company that builds what I'm doing as a platform that's highly refined. And we'll just buy it off the shelf and say, here's what I need. Here's how it works. I still think that's a bit away because that's a really, really complex ask, considering how this is working for me and the kind of problems I come up with all the time. But I do see that as a possibility where you have this incredible framework. I'll also steal from him another phrase. He says that, does anybody write assembly anymore? No, right? Everything's abstracted. And AI is creating an abstraction layer. So what we need to become is really good at understanding our design requirements, our functional requirements, our business requirements, and the boundaries or restrictions against the implementation requirements. And an example of this might be, it might come up with some tool set that is not compatible or the best choice in an Amazon environment or an Azure environment or a Google Cloud environment. So you have to tell it, hey, I only work in AWS, therefore what's the best framework for this? And it will go find it. It also screws up. It told me to use tools that were deprecated and no longer available at Amazon. So you got to get through those iterations too. But that's why my job is to be the orchestrator, architect, and business person to say, hey, think about this, do this, don't do that.
Yeah, I think again, what you're doing is really inspiring, and it really does just, I think for those who haven't sort of opened up AI and tried to do this yourself, um, there's really no magic behind it. It's really just as easy as, you're using Claude Code, for example. It really is as easy as ChatGPT, right? I mean, you just, I was pairing with one of my engineering leads the other day, and I was like, okay, now what? Okay, so like it's nothing that, business folks with a little bit of technical acumen can't understand and do, right? Like it's not completely out of norm. And I love that. I love that code or building just, AI is just making it more accessible for everybody, which I think is really important.
I think part of the key here is I'm not afraid to push buttons on my keyboard or click things around my computer and screw things up. And so many people are afraid of their computers if they're not technologists. They're like, ooh, I don't want to break it. I don't want to ruin something. And so the same thing, I have that same approach with AI. I'm not afraid to ask it questions. How do you work? Why do you work this way? What's the best way to communicate with you? And I'll give you an example. I said, what's the best way for an AI to understand communication? And it said, well, if you give me Markdown, that's pretty simple. But if you gave me JSON, it's more structured and it's easier to understand. I said, great, let's do all the documentation in JSON then. And it's like,
That's
brilliant, that'll
amazing.
help me.
Know and ask those questions, right? It is
Well,
like
yeah,
it is like you're talking to a human. Like, how do you prefer this? Are you a visual learner? Are you a
yeah, exactly. I'll give you another case in point because I just sent you this. I sent you this prompt that I co-developed because I stole it from Sabrina Romanov, and it's a prompt to humanize LLM output. We all hate the M dash. Nobody can get rid of the M dash. And even Sabrina's prompt, which was great, and it has so many wonderful things, could not eliminate the M dash, no matter that it said 3 times to eliminate it. And I kept pushing ChatGPT. Why can't you eliminate the M dash? What is wrong with this prompt? How are you processing this prompt to create the output? What would it take for you to eliminate the M dash? And it finally came back and said, hey, you need to understand, the first thing I do is plan, then I draft, and then I output. So if you don't tell me to eliminate the M dash in part of the planning phase, I'll write it and not realize I wrote it. And then you ask me to go replace it after the fact, and that's not what I do. I don't go back and do find replace. So it said you need to prompt me to structure my sentences when in the planning phase to not need an M dash. And
Yeah.
that is the game changer. So all it took was asking the question, how do you operate? Why do you do the things you do? What's the best way to make this work? And that's me. I mean, look, it was very daunting to turn on VS Code and even start up an IDE again and figure all this out. And so I literally said, I know zero. Give me the stupid baby steps. Tell me exactly where to click and get to start a repository because I don't understand. And it was like, look for the big green button. I'm like, cool. I see a green button. I'll click it.
I love that. I love that. And it's also funny because like you would think, you know, engineering, working with people, right? It's all a people thing. So it's almost like if you're talking to AI, I mean, it's almost silly to say, well, this is AI's problem.
Yeah.
It sort of forces you to look at how you communicate with AI, which is very different. Like if you were working with an engineer, right, and they didn't understand things or things like that, like how much time would you spend trying to figure out? I mean, if you're a good manager or a good leader, you're probably doing that. But a lot of people sort of don't take that step, let's say, right, or think like,
Yeah.
oh, well, it's that person. But AI sort of forces you now to say, well, there's only me. And so if I need to learn how to better communicate, so everything I see about AI is just making us better humans generally. Um,
I love that view. I do because communication's hard.
mhm.
And if you don't figure out how to communicate well throughout your life, which is a skill you're going to have your entire life, your life doesn't improve.
Yep.
So I always think of that as that's the one skill you can always build upon. I was really fortunate at age 17 to be given the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And one of the habits that I think applies so importantly here is seek to understand before being understood.
Mhm.
And so I take that approach. I've tried to embody it my whole life. Like, how should things work? I'll give you another example. I had a prompt that I ran twice, and it had 2 totally different outputs. And so I came back and said, why do you have 2 different outputs from this prompt? And it said, because your prompt left me to assume things. Did you want cost optimization or performance and speed? And so one outcome was cost, the other one was speed. And those are contrary to each other. And so it said, you should refine the prompt to encapsulate these things. And it could be as simple as don't exceed a budget of $250 a month, but optimize for speed otherwise. And that's what we did. So it's really seeking to understand when you have communication. And that's why I like to think of this more as a human than a computer. It's not me telling it what to do. It's me collaborating with it so it can figure out what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, you're such an inspiration. I can't wait to see the product come out. I'm very excited. You told me a little bit about it, so I can't wait to use it. And I think this just really again solidifies this idea that, I mean, you're the CEO of a company and you're just spent a week and, built
You know what's
an
weird about that
enterprise grade
though?
product.
Here's the hard part. Yes, I'm CEO, and I ask myself, should I be spending my time on this?
Yeah.
Should I literally be the one to go in and play with agentic coding and get back into coding? And the same question crossed my mind years ago when we had to design a new form viewer. And my team was too busy. And I finally said, you know what, I'm just going to do it because it needs to get done. And I want to see it. I want to see my vision come to life. And it's not like we wouldn't have gotten to this point at some point in the future, but it's like we have to give ourselves permission in our roles sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, a CEO doesn't do that. Actually, yes, I do. I'm a technologist. I'm a product-oriented CEO, and I get my hands dirty to try to figure out how do we make things happen. And I don't put myself above anybody else and say, you go figure it out. I'm adding to the process of how we do engineering by having done this. And I'm really, really excited about that. And I think that's one of the core problems with leaders in general is they think their job is to tell everybody what to do and not figure it out for themselves. And my gosh, now that I figured this out, my team is way more inspired and more interested in doing this than they ever were before.
Yeah, yeah. It's like that balance of sort of, okay, this isn't my responsibility to, AI, I think it's also sort of a unique snowflake, right? Because it's changing the world. And so if you don't understand that intimately, individually within yourself, it's hard to facilitate that change anywhere. It's hard to understand that change. It's hard to truly understand like what it actually means for you, for the organization, like what opportunities are out there, right? But you have to like feel it, touch it, play
Yeah.
with it.
So Tracy, I want to ask you a question if I can.
Yeah, of course.
And I'll give you the context. I kept feeling like I'm behind. There's so
Uh-huh.
many people doing such amazing things with AI,
Mhm.
agentic coding. You hear about all these people using Cursor and now Claude Code. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so far behind. I'm so far behind. This is one of the impetus to do this. And I'm not asking for compliments or anything, but how far behind am I? Where are we in the transition to AI? How many companies are using agentic coding right now?
I think that there's a lot of people who have a lot of licenses, and you definitely have these outliers of, whether it's small pockets of different organizations utilizing it or engineers, small pockets of engineers utilizing it. But you're pretty far along. I mean, you and I had a conversation about why use subagents with your project or not use subagents. And, even that conversation is something that, you don't hear a lot, right? Um, you can very much tell on LinkedIn. I always struggle with the conversations around LinkedIn because if I'm consuming LinkedIn posts, right, and I see pretty basic content, I'm like, well, sure, but you're not there yet if you're putting out this content. But then there's
Yeah.
all this other side to say most people aren't there. And so how do you meet people where they are? Right. I think a lot of people are touching on agents, like wanting to do it, thinking about it, maybe doing copy paste. There's just all different flavors of sort of where people are along in the adoption curve. But my mission is really to get people to where you are, right? Like your 100% of your code is committed using AI. Like that should be that will be the reality in which we live in. So
Yeah.
the faster we get there, the better. I think when people people are waiting, like a lot of people just wait and see what happens. But the problem is if you don't train your team now and get them used to the tooling, let's say, right? Like we haven't even reached the peak of where the tooling could be. And so as we're starting to do that and as new features are starting to come out and things like that, uh your team needs to be ready. And it's hard to go from like 0 to 10, right? So you should be like 2 or 3 and maybe the industry is at 5 and you're sort of like going along, but you have to be on the journey. You have to get on get on the path, right?
Yeah, you're
Um,
bringing up something that I'm actually trying to convey in this conversation and really am advocating for, and it's the shift in mindset that we're going through.
mhm,
You have to go through a shift in mindset when it comes to leveraging the AI capabilities. You have to look at your job and ask, am I going to still be doing the same things 2 years from now? Should I still be
mhm,
doing the same things
mhm.
2 years from now? And if you learn that AI can do these things for you, you get to elevate your role. I think a lot of people are afraid they're going to lose their job, their responsibility level, even their pay scale. But I disagree with that. I think if you elevate yourself and you become the conductor of this train and you make it happen, now you understand the whole picture and you shift your mindset along the way, you're more and more valuable, not less.
Yes, yes. Yeah, it's that whole idea of I don't remember who gave the quote, but it's this whole idea that, it's like any team member, right? I mean, you all find your place in teams. For me, a lot of times there's not leadership that arrives, right? So I tend to become a leader in a lot of the different things that I do, for better or for worse. Um, but same thing with AI. Okay, now you have somebody who is amazing at coding. You don't need to do it. So what are the other skills, right? What's the like other 5% of your job right now? If mostly 100% of your job is coding, what's the value that you bring to the journey? And usually it is, right, being more human, being more creative, teaching, understanding how to utilize AI. But, your job, if you found your only value was writing tests, well, you know what? AI is going to do it much better, much faster than you. So I think that's a struggle for people. Like, okay, how is my job? How is my job changing? What do I actually and I think a lot like engineers are sort of like artists too, right? It's like
Hmm.
this artisanal, like I created this thing myself.
Oh yeah,
Um,
tons of pride in that too. I've built cool things. I
yeah,
love it.
but you can create using AI. It's just another tool in your toolbox. So I don't think it diminishes the sort of value or the product that you bring out.
I'll give you my perspective as CEO and what I want for my own team, and I think a lot of other leaders want this for their engineering team. I want to produce code 10 times faster. Do you know how many more features we could add? Do you know how many more problems we could solve? Do you know how many more products we could introduce to the market? We have such an amazing gift in our intellect to create solutions to problems beyond what AI can do, but AI can execute building those things. So if my team actually could produce 10 times more code in a single year, I'd get 10 times more work done. I'd win that much more market share. I'd help that many more customers solve problems.
Yeah.
I, how often is it when you run a software company, a customer says, "Oh, I wish your product could do this." What if you could turn that around in the next week or the
Yeah.
next weekend and be like,
Yeah,
"Oh
because
yeah, it's done."
everybody who's like, because I just hear like I hear I'll hear my CTO in my brain, for example, and he'll be like, "Oh, but tech debt," and it's like, well, you know what? Tech debt doesn't even matter anymore because the reason why tech debt mattered before was because it took so long to clean up that tech debt. Okay, now all of a sudden AI can clean up your tech debt, so who cares?
Yeah.
Maintenance. Okay, maintenance cost is zero. I mean, close to zero, right? So why does it matter to have so, like, it's interesting because even that idea of focus, you always talk about like, oh, you got to focus your product. Like, does it matter anymore? Is it
I
going to
mean, look,
serve people?
when we hire people, we're looking at how are you going to add value to our company. If an engineer can help us go 2, 3, 8, 10 times faster, that's incredible value. Who wouldn't want
Hmm.
that?
Yeah.
If you're saying to yourself as an engineer, I'm just a really elegant programmer, I build the best code, I just want to keep coding and coding, how much value you're going to add compared to somebody who can do what you do times 10?
Yep. Yep. I love that. I love that so much. Rich, you have a podcast as well. So tell us about your podcast.
Well, and you were my guest on it. So everybody's got
Yes.
to check out Tracy. She's awesome. It's called The Customer Wins. And I love to talk to business leaders about what they're doing to help their customers win, build a great customer journey and customer experience. And we talk about challenges like how did you build your company? How do you overcome growth? I've learned so much from my guests. In fact, this week's episode is a summary of the four, I can't remember, key lessons I've learned about how you build the best customer experience from the people I've had on my show. It's awesome.
I love that. And where can we find it?
Go to quickforms.com. There's a podcast menu, and you'll see all the options: Spotify, Apple, YouTube. We're publishing shorts on YouTube and LinkedIn constantly. So, yeah, follow me on LinkedIn too. I'm the Quick Forms CEO.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you everyone for listening. And we hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope we inspired you all to pick up Claude Code, really, because Claude Code really is the sort of best thing in the market right now Rich, you didn't even vibe code. I wouldn't even call what you do vibe code because it's so far beyond that. You're building product, right?
Oh, I
But
forgot to tell you something really cool. Can I tell you really
what?
fast?
Tell me, yes.
Okay, so vibe coding I think of as Lovable and V0 and
Yeah.
web applications. So I
Yes.
took my business plan and my detailed implementation plan to V0,
Uh-huh.
popped it in there and said, build me the web application this describes.
Yes.
Oh, enterprise grade, 16 pages, interactions, customers, customer
It's amazing,
management.
right?
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Super
Yeah.
fast, super easy. Yeah.
That's that is super. So yeah, I definitely need a link to that when you get the chance because that's amazing. Yeah, definitely check those out. You can chat with me and Rich. Find us on LinkedIn if you have any questions. We always love to help. I mean, I feel like both you and I am volunteering you, Rich.
I love the
we
help.
all, yeah, we all love to help. Folks in their journey, if you will, because this stuff is just so exciting. Other than that, we will see you next time.